Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night to all of you. Welcome to my channel one more time. Today, I have prepared another special Dark Souls 1 challenge run for you to enjoy, hopefully. And maybe I will not enjoy it as much, but we will see. So, let's jump straight into what this challenge entails. Everybody says that magic in Dark Souls 1 is extremely overpowered. And I kind of agree. It's very powerful, and since you're staying away, it's not usually difficult to kill the enemies. So I wanted to answer the question, can you beat Dark Souls 1 using only the basic soul arrow, the first starting magic that you begin with, and the least powerful of them all? Obviously, if we want to start the challenge run from the very beginning, we need to pick the Sorcerer class since it's the only one that starts with Soul Arrow. I could potentially begin with another class, just say that the challenge run starts as soon as we get to Firelink, because I can go get the Soul Arrow from the blacksmith, but what's the fun in that, right? So I decided to go with the Sorcerer and begin the challenge run from the very beginning, the moment we step into Lordran. Alright, so as soon as we start, we can run straight past absolutely everything in the Asylum and just go and get our Catalyst. That's the only thing we need from the Asylum, and once we got that, we can jump straight into the Asylum Demon boss fight. At this point, this is exactly what was meant for the Sorcerer to use during this battle, so no surprises there. It's a pretty easy fight. Just gotta keep away and pelt him with soul arrows, and that's it. Easy peasy. Once the Asylum Demon is defeated, we can just run straight to the Crow and begin our journey proper. At this point, the only thing that we need is a lot of souls. Why? Because of the first restriction that I'm gonna put on this challenge run. It's not gonna be a challenge run without a restriction, right? So, for this one, I am only allowed to level up intelligence. Nothing else. Not vitality, not endurance, not even resistance, nothing. Just intelligence. Now that we're picking up things, there are some very key items for things that we need to get before doing anything of importance. The first one is a second copy of Soul Arrow. That way we have up to 60 casts. One of the other benefits of choosing the Sorcerer from the very beginning is the fact that the Sorcerer begins with 3 attunement slots. It's the class that begins with the most, and since we're not allowed to level up attunement at all, we're gonna stick with 3 attunement slots for the rest of the game. That's it. Another thing that we need to pick up is the Red Tearstone Ring, since eventually our damage will begin to drop off and we might need to use it. Obviously the damage at the beginning of the game is pretty substantial, like these enemies have no resistance to magic, and by now I've already leveled up to 21 intelligence, which gives us a pretty nice boost. The next thing that we need is the Residence Key, since Griggs holds a couple of things that we actually want for this playthrough. With that in hand, we can jump straight into Taurus Demon. I have no reason to skip him now, so yeah, let's just go for it. And just for the heck of it, I got into RTSR range, just to, give it a try, see how it goes. Obviously our damage is massive at this point. 181 per cast is pretty strong. We do have to consider that we are in RTSR range, but the thing is, we can just keep away, so it's fine. We open both of the shortcuts available to us right now, and at this point, we decide to engage in a lovely magic battle against this channeler, which was a little bit more complicated than I expected. We free Lautrec because we might need his ring later, and then we jump straight into the Gargoyles fight. This fight is not particularly difficult, but at this point, I am not really that used to playing keep away, so I'm having a little bit of trouble judging the distances and making sure not to get hit by their long range. Somehow at one point during the battle, the first one dropped me into RTSR range, which helped me just finally get rid of it before the second one properly joins the fight. But I decided to heal out of it just in case, since I didn't want to risk it. And although this is not a hard fight, I just didn't want to have to do it again if anything happened. We immediately ring the first bell. Make sure to pick up the best armor set in the entire game, and then we can jump straight into the Moonlight Butterfly fight. Again, this is a super easy fight for our current setup, since usually what's hard about the Moonlight Butterfly is the fact that it flies. But since we have a ranged attack that we can use, it shouldn't be too hard. However, right now we start noticing what happens when an enemy has some amount of magic resistance, and that is, it can one-shot us if we're not careful with it. Once we get our bearings, it's just making sure that we avoid every one of its attacks, pelted with soul arrows, and we have more than enough ammunition to get it down. With that, we can now free Griggs and begin buying some stuff from him. The things that we need are the basic soul arrows, so we have one more cast, and ideally we want to get the Bellowing Dragon Crest ring, since that one is gonna boost all of our sorceries, and guess what? Soul arrow is a sorcery, so that helps a ton with our damage. With that, we can jump straight into the Capra demon fight, since there's nothing else we need. But the thing is, this fight with this little amount of health and no poise at all is a nightmare. You have to get past the dogs, you cannot miss the stairs, you cannot fall from the stairs, and even once you make it up all the way to the stairs, you still have to deal with the dogs without getting interrupted from casting or dying to some other bullshit. But once you get the dogs down, it's just a matter of pelting him with soul arrows until it dies. We do have a little bit of a scare at some point when he decides to jump and hit us again, but by now I'm pretty used to that thing. Like, he keeps doing it every single challenge run that I do, so yeah, I'm starting to get used to it. A couple more soul arrows, and with that, the Capra demon is finally down. At this point, I decided to head into the depths to free Laurentius, since we will need a Pyromancy Flame to cast Power Within at some point. I am guessing that we will need it, so better have it. By the way, the Catalysts do not have a kick attack, so yeah, we had to get Lautrec down the old-fashioned way. But with that, we acquire the Fap Ring. After saying yes to Laurentius, we now have our great Pyromancy Flame. We picked up the Grasscrest Shield, which we eventually didn't need, but it is what it is. Now for the Hydra is a lot more complicated, especially the last head, but with a little bit of clever positioning, it can be done. The Golem, on the other hand, requires a ton of magic, since its magic resistance is through the roof. But after a lot, and I mean a lot, of soul arrows, we eventually managed to kill it and free Dusk. Now we just need to talk to her a couple of times and we can get another huge boost to our power by getting the Dusk Crown Ring. For that, we first need to talk to her in the basin after summoning her, and that makes her stuff appear. Now we want to go back to the asylum to get a little bit of trading. I got some Twinkling Titanite, and though I didn't need it, we got the Rusted Iron Ring, and now it's time for us to face the Stray Demon. To be honest, I was very scared of this fight, since this guy has a huge health pool. But we have 90 casts, so I expected it to be possible, and given that we are doing 200 damage per hit, it actually is not that hard, and I was scared for nothing, honestly. Except for the fight that he does kill me once. What can I say? It was just... I just don't know how to dodge that attack if I'm already in front of him. Like, I don't know where I need to run, but, you know. Eventually, we get the rhythm going. It's just staying behind him, and once he starts spamming the same attack again and again and again, we can just stay behind him, stay behind his ass, just keep throwing that same soul arrow again and again. And at this point, it's when the run starts to get a little bit boring sometimes. And when I understand when people say, oh yeah, magic is like so boring, it's so overpowered and whatever, well, it's not overpowered at this point for me since I'm using just the basic soul arrow, but it is getting a little bit boring just playing keep away with something this slow. But eventually we do get the win and we can move on from this. We don't forget to pick up the doll though. We also need the Firekeeper souls, so we make sure to pick that one up from Blighttown. And now we can finally go and face the Spider Lady. Or we would, if we didn't have to get Power Within first. Well, not that we have to, I don't yet plan on using it like for everything, but it's a good thing to have in the back pocket. What I did try to do is go in with RTSR. That should boost our damage pretty significantly, and I tried to stun lock her by hitting her in the body, but in like the human body, but yeah, I missed. And since the lock-on does not lock onto that specific part of her body, I kinda just had to free aim it, and I'm not great at free aiming spells, so yeah, eventually I just thought that it was probably easier to just play keep away, especially with the amount of damage that we're doing. With all of our buffs right now, we're doing like 350 damage per hit, which is pretty nice and means that we can get the kill on the very next try. I didn't even need to cut this fight since it was fairly quickly. It went down fairly quickly, I'd rather say, right? I did my best to try and free aim the last shot. Not that I needed to, but I just wanted to give it a try, see if I could do it. And I actually did manage to hit her, which surprised me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Normally you would lock on, like why wouldn't you lock on for this fight? So yeah, anyways, I just tried it and it worked. And after that, it was just time to attack her brother. So I picked up the clothes, and then it was just a matter of waiting for him to detach his arm and run like hell. The only problem is I'm not always super great at luring him all the way back, and unfortunately this is one of those times when it just didn't want to work for some reason. For the second attempt, I just had to run all the way back until I heard him detach his arm again. And once he does that, we just run back all the way to the entrance. And thankfully, this time around, since he was closer, he did decide to jump. And with that, it becomes super easy. I mean, we have 60 soul arrows, we just need to hit like 5 or 6. I always tend to forget how many it is, but count it with me. 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. Yeah, just 5. So with that, we have both of the brothers killed, and now we can just keep going. We got our intelligence up to 50, and now it's time for Sen's Fortress. This part is always a little bit interesting, but thankfully, the fact that now I do need to free Logan means that I don't have to attack this snake for nothing, but rather I actually attack it for something. Which is interesting because I always like doing it, but this time actually it has a purpose. Because Logan can give us another copy of the spell, if we are close enough to actually open the thing. After that we run directly to the bonfire, and eventually I will talk with Logan. I don't need it right now, so just equip Power Within. Did a little bit of a wardrobe change just to make sure that my defenses were up to par, and from there on It's just a matter of running under it and trying to free aim those spells at the knees, or below the knees rather. Thankfully, it just takes 2 power within boosted soul arrows to get him to start stumbling around, and from there on it's really easy. I mean, the damage, as you can see, is pretty decent, so we didn't even need like the many casts that we had. It was just a couple of more after he stood up, and I even stopped aiming at the feet because I didn't need to really. So that's another 40,000 souls in our pocket. The rafters are always interesting. This time around I did decide to jump. I'm always like struggling to decide if I want to jump or not, and this time I decided to do it. Now for the archers, they're fairly easy as long as you can parry them. It did get a little bit dicey when I got hit and I got to really low health, but thankfully he decided to fall anyway. I ran past everything inside the castle and jumped the railing, so yeah, this time it wasn't as difficult as it normally is. So without further ado, let's jump into one of the hardest fights, or what I thought would be one of the hardest fights. But as you can see, with power within, the damage is pretty good on Ornstein. But of course, we choked on the first try. That's just how it is. The second try didn't go as planned as well. So yeah, I started to think that maybe I was gonna have a little bit of trouble with this fight. I mean, it is an infamous fight for being hard, but we'll see. I returned to get the Havel's armor since I hadn't picked it up yet, and I thought I might be using it later. I wasn't sure yet, so I decided to pick it up anyway. But yeah, a couple more deaths to these 2 guys before we actually started to get a good feel for it. And of course, my dodges are not exactly great at the moment, and usually I do a little bit better staying closer to them. So even though I'm already halfway through the entire playthrough, basically, at least in terms of length of the game, not this particular playthrough, yeah, I'm not getting like super confident with dodging far away attacks for the most part. I don't tend to see them as often since I tend to keep closer to the enemy, right? So yeah, not super confident, but thankfully this time around I did manage to get Ornstein down. Thankfully, due to power within, I'm doing a good amount of damage. And once it was only Smough left, that shit's a little bit easier. I mean, he's slow, he's fat, his attacks are pretty easy to evade, and especially it's super easy to bait out the jumping slam. So once you get that down, it's just a matter of rinse and repeat, ducking under it, firing 1 soul arrow and then running away. And every now and then he will just like lore walk at me, so I can just pelt him with soul arrows a little bit more. And yeah, after a while it was a pretty easy fight, all things considered. I did expect to have to try them on, like try the fight a lot more, but thankfully I really didn't have to, and I did manage to kill them pretty easily. So we get the Lord Vessel, and now we can finally warp between one bonfire and the next. Now it's finally time to speak with Logan and get the next copy of Soul Arrow, which for some strange reason was at the bottom of the list, and I think that's kind of weird. Like, why would it be? So anyway, I started buying all of the spells, or as many as I could, because I do want to complete his quest at some point. After that, we put the soup bowl on the altar so we can open up the way, and from there on we need to get the broken pendant because we do need to access the DLC later. And once again, these golems are just a pain in the ass to kill with magic, but eventually after a few shots it finally goes down, and that does not bode well for the fight with Seath. I'm starting to dread this fight. He has really good magic defenses. and I'm afraid it's gonna be pretty difficult. So yeah, I tried to test the damage just to see how it is, and 41 damage is not good. Like, I know he's in his invincible phase, but yeah. Also, for this part, you definitely cannot damage the snake with the soul arrows. I tried investigating a little bit, so if you want to invalidate the run, technically it's invalid, but I'm just gonna roll with it, because, I mean, it would be pretty boring to end it here. So yeah, I escape. I got the cell key so I can liberate Logan once again. So we turn on the bonfire and then we bone out so we can return to the prison and we can free Logan. Because remember what I said, I do need to finish his quest line so I can get the 10 crystallization catalyst at some point. At that point, with all the souls we've collected, we'll go back to him, and it's time to keep purchasing as much as we can, but of course, his sorceries are extremely expensive at this point, so I had to do a little bit more farming, but eventually we do manage to clean out the entire shop. Now it's time for the DLC. Alright, first of the DLC bosses, and we have Sanctuary Guardian. He shouldn't be too much trouble, but we're gonna do him as like a test of damage to see how we're gonna fare with the rest of the DLC bosses. And as you can see, with Power Within, we are dealing a little bit less than 100 damage per cast, which is not great. Like, damage is definitely falling off, and it does take a while, like a long while to kill him. Remember, we started with 60 soul arrows, so this time around I wanted to show the entire fight just to show that it's a pretty boring fight. There's not too much difficulty in this one. The biggest concern was actually when Power Within was active, and it was actually taking away from my life. But anyway, yeah, we managed to first try it, and we are left with 16 soul arrows. So now the things start to get a little bit complicated, because I can no longer spare using Power Within every single time, since it does take a spell slot and we are a bit limited with those. Still, I decided to try it with Seath. So as you can see, I did not come into the fight with the full 60 soul arrows. I had a couple less, but yeah, we decided to try him anyway, and eventually I noticed that I was definitely not gonna have enough damage, so I had to bait the big explosion attack and reduce my health up until RTSR range, so we can actually start doing some damage, and hopefully we have enough soul arrows to get this done. As you can see, damage is pretty good, but still I choked. I mean, what can I say? You all know me by now. If there's a way of choking, I will find it. This time around, I decided to start with Power Within. Not a great idea, but yeah. I've started to notice a pattern. Starting with Power Within is a lot better than starting with RTSR. If I start with RTSR, problem is that I have to play perfectly from the beginning instead of just the last part of it. So yeah, starting with Power Within first and then going into RTSR if needed feels a lot more comfortable and allows me to maybe get hit once or twice, if anything. So yeah, this time around we managed to use 29 soul arrows and get him considerably under half health, but I did still think I'd need RTSR to finish it off, and thankfully I did decide to change that, because I definitely would not have been able to do it without RTSR. We just had 8 soul arrows left, But thankfully, this gives me a good benchmark as to what's gonna happen next. Like, the next few bosses, probably I do have the damage for them, but we'll figure something out. Anyway, it's time to go get the 10 crystallization catalyst from Logan. So I quickly dispatched him and make sure to get the staff. I'm not gonna use it all the time. I am gonna change it every now and then, but it is gonna be our main staff from here on out. Now here's a fight I didn't expect to have any trouble with. Demon Firesage. Normally, he's super easy. But remember what I mentioned before? Like, not being able to properly dodge the long-range attacks of bosses? Yeah, there's no better example than this one. I didn't know at all how to avoid his attacks without being like super close to him. So I kept getting hit again and again and again. I died so much to this boss. Like, I feel ashamed of how much trouble this one gave me. Like, I already killed both of his brethren with this exact build and with a lot less things. Like, by now the build is pretty much complete, but I still had a lot of trouble with this one. Eventually, as you can see, I did decide to change to Logan's Catalyst, since this one doesn't have my casts, and also it allows me to use better armor. With those souls, I can now get to 62 intelligence, and now it's time for the Demon Centipede. Again, I stupidly decided to try and jump the lava instead of dodging it. Someone in my comments did tell me at some point that I should probably try and dodge it, but I just sorta forgot. So yeah, not proud of that one. But anyway, I eventually decided that I was just gonna fight him nearby in this little platform, and it was not going well at first. Honestly, not going well at all. As I said, I'm more used to dodging attacks from close by, so whenever I need to kinda get away a little bit, it's a little bit more difficult. But thankfully, in one of those times, he did decide to cooperate, and we can finally get it done. Now, look at this interesting thing that happened. I was just exploring again because why not? And I fell into this little crevice, and yeah, that's what happened. I didn't die at any point. Like, I just floated there. And I genuinely expected to just die after like 30 seconds. Yeah, it didn't happen. I was just like waiting for a while. A good long while. Eventually I just had to quit out and get back into the game, and I just spawned in the platform above. But yeah, interesting things. This time around, we're definitely not dropping into that particular cove. And from then on, I do actually, finally, for once in my life, remember where the door is. Instead of like banging my head towards every one of the sides before I actually get it. Before the Bed of Chaos, it's important to get this Pyromancer out, but as it's the problem with this spell, yeah, fighting humanoid enemies is not always the most comfortable, but thankfully it just takes a couple of casts. Now, as for the Bed of Chaos, well, honestly, what damage you're doing doesn't really matter with her. Just kinda need to platform better, I guess. A little tip for when you've destroyed both of the balls: when the thing breaks, there's like a little square that pokes out of the hole. If you drop there, like diagonally, you always fall on the branch. So that's good. It's easy if you just wanted to know. The Painted World is next, and I'm gonna do what I always do. Just run past everything, open the shortcut, go down into the sewer, open the door towards Priscilla, I'm really not super sure why people hate this thing so much. Like, I mean, I always die to the bone wheels, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. For Priscilla, I did decide to try it with Power Within, and as you can see from how much I took with that first cast, I think that was a pretty good thing to do. Now for the casts, it's a little bit hard to just free aim it, but with a little bit of luck, we can eventually hit her a little bit. Yeah, we don't manage to break her veil. I mean, I don't think Soul Arrow does much poise damage, and I definitely couldn't hit her fast enough or consistently enough to break it. Well, now for Gwyndolin, and I mean, you all know how it is. It's not a difficult fight, and while I normally would expect to be able to hit him and kill him in like around 3 to 4 cycles, well, as you can see from the damage and the fact that casting is so slow that I have to constantly run at him and just hit him like twice, it did take me a full 6 cycles to complete him. But anyway, with that, that's another boss killed. The Nidus, on the other hand, is a pretty easy fight. She decides to begin by buffing, because she always does that. Why wouldn't she? And after that, it's pretty easy. I mean, she's fat rolling, so as long as I fire when she decides to go backwards, the arrow's gonna hit her. So just 3 soul arrows and she's down. The catacombs are a bit of a different beast. Normally I would just drop down, so that's exactly what I decided to do. Just drop down. There's no reason for me to go through the entire thing, so I don't know if you expected me to do so. Definitely not. So yeah, we go for Pinwheel, and this is a joke fight at this point. You already know it. I just pelt him with soul arrows, and I didn't even need to cut the fight at all. He just died, basically. Going through the entire thing, we light the first bonfire in the Tomb of the Giants, get the skull lantern in case I need it. I do end up needing it because I'm terrible at maneuvering over here. So we get the second bonfire and then decide to immediately go and try Nito. The thing is, I do not have the divine damage that I could probably be using, so that makes it a little bit more complicated. So I do die a few times, and at that point I decide to go get Hidden Body and the Slumbering Dragon Crest shield, so that way I can basically just avoid the skeletons from the very beginning. So by dropping down and then running a little bit to the right, you eventually find a spot where even if Hidden Body runs out, they don't immediately react to you. Just have to be careful not to attract the big ones, and you do have a little bit of time to be able to cast again. And by the time that the last one ran out, yeah, he was basically done. We just pelt him with soul arrows. I mean, when you are using the weakest sorcery there is no much point at trying to do anything else. At the very least, I could try and tank one hit to make it a little bit more interesting, but yeah, boring fight, easy fight. At this point, a lot of the fights have become that, just pelting it with soul arrows because I have a fuck ton of them, and they can basically do nothing since I'm standing a little bit far away. Well, not that they cannot do anything, but once you get used to dodging their faraway attacks, which are not many, it's a little bit easier. So yeah, now it's time for Sif. Once again, the problem with Sif is I'm used to staying under her, not far away. So yeah, having to stay a little bit far to cast since it takes so long to cast, I do accumulate a couple of deaths to her. Like, I don't even know what to say. It's just, I'm not a great player. You already know that by now. Damage is looking pretty good though. So after dying for the second time to her, I decided that I'm gonna try with Power Within, see how it goes. But the thing is, she decides to hit me with a very quick shot before it even begins. So eventually we do get to apply our buff, and from there on I decided to try and stay under her as much as I could. But yeah, casting time is a bit of a problem when the boss is fast, and Sif is one of those bosses that I definitely would qualify as being pretty fast. So what worked better for me was just learning her spacings, and she did decide to show me her limping animation at the end, but thankfully it was just until I hit her once. With her souls we get to 77 intelligence, and now we're getting pretty big brain. Like at this point we're no longer getting too much out of the levels up, but yeah, we do what we can. Down at the abyss, I decided that yeah, this is definitely at the time for Havels, and let's see how it goes with Power Within. Like, this is a DPS race, so I definitely need to try and do as much damage as I can, as fast as I can. And yeah, the damage is not great at this point. Like, 263 per cast is not amazing, but it is getting the job done. At least it looks like it is. We do manage to get the first two kings down before even the third one appears. But yeah, at this point it's starting to get a little bit rough. Power Within runs out. We start to get surrounded. We are not doing as much damage as we want. It gets a little bit frustrating, but thankfully we managed to clutch it out just at the end before the explosion is gonna explode, basically. So with that out of the way, it's time to go back to the DLC for the last few bosses. Artorias. How difficult you are sometimes. Well, first of all, we need to check what our damage is. So thankfully, he gives us a pretty good window at the beginning to apply Power Within. You might be thinking, why are you activating Power Within without checking the damage first? I was pretty sure that I wouldn't be able to do enough damage just like I was, and I was actually right. It seems like mathematically it made more sense to go with Power Within as long as I could get, like, if I remember correctly, it was like 10 or 15 shots before it ran out. So yeah, I decided to go with that. At some point he did manage to punish me for it, and I died more than a few times, let's call it. I'm not gonna count them all, but yeah, I definitely did die more than a few times to him. But the good thing is that during this entire time I was once again getting used to his moveset, memorizing all of his distances, because remember, I tend to fight close by. So whenever I need to do something a little bit different, I need a little bit of period to readapt to his moveset. But eventually we do manage to get a little bit more comfortable. We get Power Within going just before the fight instead of using it inside, and we do manage to get close to 10 shots before it runs out. But the problem is, for some reason, either my calculations were wrong or something, but I noticed that I was not going to be able to do enough damage, so I had to hot swap the RTSR in while he was buffing, and then get hit by a precise attack so that I would drop below 20% health. And somehow I did still manage to barely scrape by, and as you can see, after that last shot we are left with 3 soul arrows left. Like, it was super close, and you can see that I was pretty happy that it was finally over. After that, we do manage to get the silver pendant, which we definitely need, and the crest key that we also definitely need. The last 2 bosses are gonna be tough, so we need to get ready for them. After going all the way to trigger the Kalameet fight and then go back to Goth, we get to look at the most amazing cutscene of the game. So I'm gonna shut up for now. What a beautiful shot as always. So now let's give Kalameet a try. Let's try and figure out how we're gonna work with this giant lizard basically. As you can see, the damage, definitely not great. So yeah, that does lead to our first death to Kalameet. So let's go and begin a little counter for it. But before we make any rash decisions, let's at least try Manus once, see if it's much different. Damage is slightly better, about 10 points better, but it's not great. And yeah, he does catches us with his wombo combo very close to the beginning of the fight. So at that point I decide, well, you know what, let's go back to Kalameet and just figure him out as much as we can. We start using the dogs at this point to lower our health, and we're gonna do the entire fight in our TSR to try and get the best bang for buck. So using the waterfall sometimes, using the dogs most of the times, we start trying to figure it out. As you can see, damage is considerably better with our TSR, and the thing is, mathematically we cannot kill him without using our TSR. We definitely need it. So yeah, I'm just gonna let you enjoy all of my deaths to Kalameet now. Well, eventually after 73 deaths, I learned a few things. First of all, it's really difficult to do this no hit. Like, it's really, really difficult. At some point, I decided to change my gear a little bit, so I ditched the Fap ring so that I could get both the RTSR and the Bellowing Dragon Crest ring together to get 212 damage per cast, which at this point, I'm thinking it's like the best number ever. Like, that's a pretty good number right now for me. So yeah, after a while he finally dies, and now it's time to go for Manus. For Manus, I decide to use the humanity sprites to lower myself into RTSR, because by now I already know 100% that I'm definitely gonna need both RTSR and the Bellowing Dragon Crest ring if I want to do enough damage. And as you can see, I'm doing 275 per cast, which is better than with Kalameet, but you also do need to remember that he does have more health than Kalameet. So yeah, it's kind of necessary. There's no way around it. And it does take a while to finally get into the groove of it. Thankfully, I do find Manus' attacks a little bit easier to dodge, especially if you stay far away. There's not really too much that's super problematic. I feel like Manus is one of those bosses that if you are fighting close by, it's actually harder than fighting him from far away, especially when he does the wombo combo and you get a good amount of time to just spell him with soul arrows. And for some strange reason, despite the fact that I was attacking him so much, he barely used his magic at all. Like, I think he maybe cast like 4 or 5 times in the entire fight, which to some might seem like it's plenty, but remember, this was like a 10 or 15 minute fight, so yeah, that was pretty lucky for me, and eventually he does go down. With only Gwyn left, I was honestly expecting a pretty easy fight. At first I thought, well, it's just gonna be the same old parry riposte, but here's the thing, I cannot riposte because I'm using magic. So yeah, it was not going great. At this point I decided that I needed another Fab ring, so thankfully I had killed Jeremiah before, so that didn't work out too well. I was still getting clapped again and again, and at some point I started to question myself, like, how does a caster kill Gwyn? I don't think I've ever killed him as a caster myself, and I was having a huge amount of trouble. So eventually I decided to try something different and just go full Havels, try to poise through some of the attacks to be able to cast, and thankfully that did appear to work out a little bit better. So with a little bit of strafing, a little bit of parrying, a little bit of shooting, and a little bit of tanking, we kinda did manage to find a system that worked, or at least that worked enough. Thankfully, he does take plenty of damage from our soul arrows, he doesn't have that crazy resistances, and he doesn't have that crazy health. So after just a while, he is finally defeated. And as usual, Havels tends to be the answer. Anyway, thank you for watching, and before I finish this video, as I'm finishing recording this, the audio for this video, JK Leeds just posted a video on his channel, great video by the way, in which he beat Dark Souls 1 leveling only attunement, and during his video he specifically mentioned trying out to beat the game with only soul arrow. And when I heard that, I was like, oh boy, I'm just about to drop that shit. However, I want to make it a challenge for you, JK Leeds. I want you to do it, and I just want to see what your approach to it is. Put yourself in a challenge different to mine. Mine was leveling up only intelligence and only using the soul arrow. You do whatever you want to do, only using the soul arrow. I'm super interested to see what your approach is, because your videos are always great. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. The entire run ended up taking 18 hours and change, but yeah, 18 hours basically, and we got to level 79. Thank you.